About 2 months before Roy died, we had the studio painted by Hannah, our daughter, and her partner Stephen, and Roy packed all his paintings away into the alcove there. And you can see that the alcove is not painted. He said, don't touch the paintings, they're all there. And he put away all his paintbrushes and oils over there. So when he died suddenly on the 30th of September, after minimal pain during the day, which we thought was indigestion but turned out to be heart, that's what he left. He left all his paintings stacked away and this series of the end of time drawings hanging like this in a white studio. The ostensible impulse for doing them was his fascination with the cosmos and the birth and death of stars and the earth itself having a birth and a death. But I said to him as he was doing them and as he discussed it, this is also about the end of your life too, isn't it? And he agreed. And 2 days before he died, on the Saturday, he went up to town on the Underground to see a drawing of one of Lucy's friends that was in an exhibition. She'd specially wanted him to go because as a child she was inspired by Roy working and earning his living as an artist here. That evening he drew this, which is the Westminster Underground and all the people going up and down, up and down. Interestingly, he had drawn Westminster Underground in his work as a perspective artist for the Jubilee Line extension. But here he's caught the sense of the people caught in the fabric of time. And he's written, a day in the underground, the fabric of time. Either caught or moving through it, these people are, just as we all do. He did. He came down one day from doing these drawings and he said he'd set himself an impossible task. And the impossible task was to try and put in one drawing the beginning and end of time in the moment now. All creatures have darkness at their back and strive towards the light, and the flowing power gives them harmony. All creatures have a darkness is a quote from Lao Tzu, which was like a Bible to Roy. He was a Chinese philosopher who lived about in the 7th century BC, and Roy would spend a long time reflecting on the sutras or verses and contemplating them and practicing the truth that he felt was hidden within them. He would write himself little things, and this was just a week or so before he died. He wrote, obey the harmony of the moment, then everything is perfect. And he'd come downstairs and tell us about this, but as well as telling us, he did practice it, and you could feel that in his last years and months, that he really did. And these drawings show it. They show all of us caught in the fabric of time, and yet the flowing power giving them harmony, so that when we're quieter and less intensely emotional, we have the sense of the flowing power that supports us all the way through life and afterwards. Time starts and stops, now is ever present, now is always now. We are just caught in passing time, he wrote. August 2013, just a month before he died. That's the kind of knife edge we all walk as we walk through life. And then from being caught in the fabric of time, caught in it and held by it, we escape, or he did, escape from the fabric of time. This is just like him popping off, it felt to us, with the suggestion of other worlds here, in this sort of geometry of spheres and circles from the colourful globe of the earth. And it was because of the profoundness of this experience that we felt, and others who I brought up here to see in the empty room, it was because of that that we felt that we would like to do an open house sometime after Roy's death. So 6 months after he's died, we've hung as much as we could of what he'd stored away around the house. In the house and home that he lived in and we've lived in for 25 years. Lucy was born here in the room downstairs and he died in the chair downstairs. For 25 years of our 34 years of married life, we lived in this house. And so we've hung the pictures about the house and many people have come. We've been staggered at the number of people who've enjoyed taking in and being awed by the variety and depth of the work that he's produced. About 20 years ago, the commercial work dried up and Roy's energies had dwindled, and we were able, through a lot of good fortune, for him to be able to paint. So he didn't want to just represent nature, though he could do that exquisitely, and he'd have sold all the watercolours that he painted, and in fact he did, from exhibitions just before I met him. But he wanted to explore what was within him, and how what he saw and responded to outside resonated with something which was felt but unformed and unclear in him. And he wasn't a great one for words. He used to say, "Oh, I don't really understand words," though he did use them very well from time to time. But I found this in the last couple of years. Looking is a marvellous thing, and it's from Rainer Maria Rilke's letters to his wife, Clara, on looking at Cézanne's paintings. And it just speaks to me about Roy's work when I opened it, and I know that Cézanne was one of Roy's very favourite painters. I'm just going to read a bit. "Oh, I that want to grow, the tree I look outside at is growing in me. Looking is a marvellous thing of which we know but little. Through it we are turned absolutely towards the outside, but when we are most of all so, things happen in us that have waited longingly to be observed. And while they reach completion in us, their significance grows up in the object outside." And the philosophical, mystical, spiritual ground of things was the ground of our marriage, I think, consciously so, and it was what held us together through the toughest and most tempestuous of times, which we certainly had. Roy often used to quote, one of his favourite sayings was that marriage is a crucible, and so it was. And sometimes we would be caught in it, flung around in the fire of it, and other times there would be gems crystallising out of it, or a joyous kind of joining, with 3 beautiful daughters come out of it. And also synchronicity has been part of what we've noticed and felt enlivened and joyous about since the beginning. One interesting thing was when I was buying this, a couple of years before it was when he was doing this series of paintings, I brought back this and another little one in the series from the Chelsea Physic Garden. The other one was a book of Blake's poems, and the title of it was Holes in the Texture of Time, which I picked up at the same time that he was contemplating doing The Fabric of Time. Sometimes Roy would enter periods of bleak despair when, as with every creative artist, they feel that the muse has completely abandoned them and nobody likes what they do and they don't know what to do. And this comes from one of those periods when, 2009, the artist has left the empty studio. Just this morning I picked up this, which speaks absolutely, I'm sure it's something Roy, I know it is, read often. "Only I am so reluctant, I have not yet been given a sign, like an infant yet unable to laugh, unquiet, roving as if I had no home. All men have abundance, only I am as if forgotten. I have the heart of a fool, so confused, so dark. Men of the world are shining, alas, so shining bright. Only I am as if turbid. Men of the world are so clever, alas, so clever. Only I am as if locked into myself. Unquiet, alas, like the sea, turbulent, alas, unceasingly. All men have their purpose, only I am futile like a beggar. I alone am different from all men, but I consider it worthy to seek nourishment from the mother." Gateway of the Dark Female is called The Root of Heaven and Earth. Uninterrupted as though persistent, it is effective without effort. Roy used often to quote that. Roy and I used to talk a lot about affect images in his artistic journey, and Joseph Campbell, I think it was, who coined the term, maybe Jung, and Joseph Campbell said that affect images have great mystical power, and words, the letter of the law, just mess them up. He said, "Affect images have been left to speak for themselves, as rights, as works of art, through the eyes to the listening heart, And that, I would say, is what we, in our own religions, had best be doing too. And if they do not speak to you, that is because you are not ready for them, and words will only serve to make you think that you've understood, thus cutting you off altogether. This was another of Roy's inner mentors, Lao Tzu, whom we will see floating in a cornfield in a bit. But Rembrandt who accompanied Roy throughout all his years. He would take this postcard from place to place, and he had very few possessions. He had next to no possessions when we met. And in 2010 he painted this wonderful painting of Rembrandt. It's as if there's something for everyone in here, which indeed we found when people came to the open house. There are landscapes of Wiltshire, thumbnail sketches, which only somebody who's practised with hand and eye over 60 odd years could manage to suggest the beauty of landscape with just a few lines. There are sketches for his happy paintings, paintings of his last year. At Pen Ponds in Richmond Park, some of these, or a clump. Clumps are so typical of the Wiltshire countryside, which we both loved. And here we have a sketch for something Ella, our oldest daughter, asked him to do. She wanted a portrait of Jesus done in the manner of the head. It's very beautiful, almost like the Turin Shroud. Just a face coming out of the mystery. And is this one birth or disappearance? This one too. Absolutely beautiful to me. And he would spend a long time wondering about the one and the two and the three, as Lao Tzu spoke of it, the process of creation, the one generating the Tao generating the one generating the two generating the three, and from the three the multiplicity of all things, the 10,000 things, as Lao Tzu calls them. And here he's tried to do what he did in many pictures, is to put them all, the brooding motherly presence which gives rise to the manifest creation and sustains it. The mountains of the mind and the world, and then us all. Are we an army? Are we creatures? Here we are. He was preoccupied with how the twos, how two happened. Always turning, always moving apart from each other and moving towards each other. Here we have another depiction, an expression of the one as the majesty of the Father, the compassionate presence of the Mother with angel helpers, and the human being, the 1, 2 and 3 in creation. 2-3 years before he died, the mess of humanity. This is for an angel with flying hair. Angels were a real presence for Roy. He didn't speak about it much, but I know they were. And another angel. Lugus, the Celtic god, which Stephen, Hannah's partner, commissioned for a flyer for a festival day at Cody Dock, a community arts development he's involved with, near where the River Lee joins the Thames, and made the flyer from that. Living with 4 women, myself and his 3 daughters, and being preoccupied and reflective about the mother of us all, as Lao Tzu puts it, here it is in the form of the motherly, the birth-giving which brings forth individual beings into life and takes them back to itself in death. Here are particular forms of the female. I think that's Hannah. I'm not sure who this one is. Sad figure, often with which arm is it? The head on the hand. A statuesque seated figure. Almost Henry Moorish. Lovely red with her dark hair. I'm not sure. Don't think I know any other painting where he puts silver. The motherly presence with her children, us. The motherly presence again with children in movement. Hannah on one side, Lucy on the other. Ella or somebody. Hannah dreaming. And one of me, fairly typically with head in hands, with a bit more curl than I've got today. Right at the back, found a drawing, well, I think I found it amongst his papers, which I wasn't familiar with, which is a self-portrait done before I knew him, I think within the 10 years before. It's a very early one, this. 94. Entry into colour. Edgeless. He's got lots of these notebooks. He's really caught the spirit of a friend of mine. 2005. So sometimes figures, sometimes landscape. Richmond Hill. The most famous views painted by all famous painters. The house on the top of Richmond Hill, which really fascinated him. He's always moving between the particular form and the archetypal form that's informing them from within. His early geometric forms, which have a very striking psychological truth about them. The singleness of the eye, the tower of the individual. Sometimes I think an artist who's really in touch with his perceptions is like that, and he would often comment on that he'd got an idea, then a few days or weeks later you would hear the idea currently. It's as if he was in tune with the zeitgeist at an intuitive level. I'd say that this was one of the affect images. It's an archetypal house, one that Roy loved. A house with ears and 2 trees either side of the front door. It's like the New Forest, like Dorset, but it's the house in his heart, really. This black and white painting of the cube, as Roy first called it from that series, hard lines, black and white edges, when they were all round the house I found it rather overwhelming. Was a huge relief to me when he moved into colour and curved lines. But my sister loved this one of my sisters, and they stood in front of it talking about it for a long time. And she ended up saying, "What's all the fuss about?" And she's got its twin painting. She is a twin. That's what it's called now. What's all the fuss about? On the next landing is one of Roy's watercolours from 1979, when we were first married, and in the first flat that we rented for a year, and it's a beautiful watercolour of a flower arrangement on a table, which he then used for as his palette in later years. And in the background you see a little Krishna, which was one of a sculpture he had just made before I met him. And this is Lao Tzu sitting in a cornfield. We hung a selection of heads. Many of these he did sell through a gallery in Twickenham and at the Affordable Art Show, which he was represented at 2 or 3 times. Each has a different quality, but they're all coming from his experience of the female, the dark female, the mother, the jazz singer, the Madonna of the Forest, and more virgin-like ones, and the double head, which is fascinating in itself. Like I think of the red recessive half of the head as the anima, his anima, and a beautiful study of an older man. It was a great relief to me when Roy moved first into colour and then into colour and curves and circles and curves. But he was always fascinated by a challenge, and the challenge of getting 5 different planes onto one 2D surface, which he achieved so that the forms almost float off the surface. I often think of these like screensavers on computers, because although still, they're in movement. The colours are remarkable. But this one here on the stairs is less geometric, and a neighbour down the road named that Millennium Burst, and the name has stuck. That's a great favourite. And the one here, I think his inspiration was walking through fields or lawns of daisies, and I love that one. This in oil is like the drawings we saw upstairs with the characteristic pose, reflective head on hand. It's like the figure here. He did a number of storybook, we call these his storybook paintings, where he abandoned perspective altogether and told a story. This is actually inspired by the story of Midsummer Night's Dream. It's Puck, looking at two lovers. Oh, what fools these mortals be, and the eternal witness, witnessing it all without movement, which that figure has something of. These two we hung here, the lower one, daffodils. He did some more naturalistic paintings for when we had the house open for Art House in 2004 and sold quite a lot. The upper one I love, and it's rather like that quote I said from Rilke about the forms flying through us, through the inner space. It's swans. My mum had that one, she loved that one. He was fascinated by forms floating off and above surfaces, and when you look, after having looked at pictures, it's often as if you see things freshly. You can see the layers of clouds in the sky, or the layers of leaves going back into the distance of trees, and these things all informed his vision in his paintings. There's another one here which we used to call the Christmas tree. Then he moved, well, this actually is an early naturalistic study. He did that one of Richmond Bridge, the sunset. This painting my mum loved, and she actually bought it from Roy. It's got softer, more diffused lines, sort of informed by his loving the shadows of things, and the shadows that play at night when the lights come through the gaps in the curtains and play on the walls and reflect out of mirrors. But it's also like light through trees. And it was inspired by a visit to Berkhamsted, which is where we took my mum to revisit her teenage haunts. Another picture she had in her last years, which she also bought, is the more abstract one of Pen Ponds, where this is the more naturalistic storybook one of Pen Ponds. That's a favourite place of all of us to go in Richmond Park. And out of that one he did a series increasingly abstract, of which that is one on its way. This is an earlier naturalistic painting, and this is also an earlier geometric one, but with softer, the lines are becoming softer, and the movement of the crosses lifting upwards. He did this at a time when a great friend of ours died, and I think it has a lot to do with that. The one in the corner is an earlier study, which has almost got the quality of enamel to me, and that's inspired by the trees at Petersham, Ham House. Would we know these pictures were by the same person? It used to bother him. He said he got no recognisable style, and he would look with a certain amount of envy in the earlier years, he worked through a lot of it, at people who were his contemporaries at St Martin's and other art colleges, and saw how they'd made a name for themselves, but they'd got stuck with a particular style, and that they had to stay, because a great friend of his, Donald Hamilton Fraser, an RA, sold his paintings through galleries, was well known, but he was rather envious of Roy's freedom to paint what he wanted, because he had to go on producing what people would buy. And in this room we've got a selection of things. There's an exquisite early watercolour. So I said he could have sold whatever he painted like that. There are two really interesting psychological type, archetypal type studies in the storybook style here. Two young lovers, he and I, Adam and Evie, which are the names of his son and daughter-in-law. And this one here of the mother and child, which some people find disturbing, others very profound. I think it's very profound. And in the top right hand corner there's a symbol, and I never asked him what it was, but I think it's a timer. There's something timeless about whatever that couple are experiencing and feeling, together and individually. These two are storybook family pictures, the four of us and Roy. sitting in the sitting room with my mother. No perspective, lots of feeling. Art was painted after my mother died. The cats, Timmy on the newel post where he used to in his later years sit and shout at us all when we came in the front door, and Tomkin here. And Roy with his glass of wine, me with my guitar. And here we've got the family at Christmas time with Marion, our dear friend through whom we met. She always comes at Christmas. And he's caught the quality of each of the girls, Ella, Hannah and Lucy. Me with a cat, Marion with a cat, and Roy as if he's about to say grace, which he probably is. And then a series of these, what he called happy pictures, which happily were done in the last couple of years of his life, where he moved from his sense of the landscape naturalistically into a more abstract Mr. Happy type feeling. Lucy was in a pottery class that was called a family class, and she had to have a family member with her to qualify for it, so he went with her. He's old enough to be her grandfather really, and he's got stuck into doing pots. He put all his paints away and he was going to be a potter, aged 70ish, and he produced these wonderful things, but then he went back to painting. And the candelabra is like an angel, and this we use as a gravy jug at Christmas time. It was timely, Roy's and my meeting, and he often described it as a collision of stars, and it did feel like that. And the momentum of destiny, fate, karma was what swept us into marriage and parenthood before we had time to turn round and doubt it. And we never really doubted the marriage, even though we went through tempestuous times. And one or other of us would often storm out, but always come back, because this was home. This is the home we both loved and created together. We'd often remember, either separately or together, things we both knew right at the beginning of the marriage, 35 years ago now. I knew that from the marriage Roy would be able to paint, and he knew that from the marriage I would be able to grow. And both are true. Thank you, I love you.